Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little different. We're leaving the world of documented, factual history and drifting into the softer, more dreamlike realm of mythology. We're going to tell the story behind a symbol you have seen 1,000 times. The rod of Asclepius, that simple staff with a single serpent wrapped around it, the international symbol of medicine. Tonight we will tell the gentle and ultimately tragic story of the man, or rather the demigod, who first carried that staff. Frankly, knowing the Greek gods, this story of healing and compassion will almost certainly involve some jealousy, a divine temper tantrum, and probably a very unfortunate ending for at least one of the mortals involved. They weren't exactly known for their subtlety. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always a huge encouragement. For those of you already settled in, I'd love to see where and when you're listening from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. I'm recording this late at night, just after 1 a.m. on a Thursday morning, here in Cheney, Kansas. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The gentle whir of the fan fades, and in its place you hear the faint, distant sound of a lyre being played, its notes clear and perfect on the warm air of ancient Greece. Our story begins, as so many Greek myths do, with a god falling in love with a mortal. And the god in this case was perhaps the most brilliant and terrifyingly beautiful of all the Olympians. Apollo. He was the god of light and the sun, of music and poetry, of prophecy and knowledge. He was golden, perfect, and eternally young, striding through the world with an effortless confidence that bordered on arrogance. And one day, while traveling through the rugged, beautiful kingdom of Thessaly, his golden eyes fell upon a mortal princess named Carinus. She was the daughter of a king, beautiful and spirited, and Apollo, who could have any goddess or nymph he desired, was utterly captivated by her humanity. He was smitten. It's the classic story. Immortal, super powerful, impossibly handsome god meets mortal girl. It's a tale as old as time. And if you know anything about Greek myths, it's a tale that has roughly a 0% chance of ending with, and they lived happily ever after. But at first, their story was a happy one. Apollo would visit her in her father's sun-drenched palace. They would walk through the olive groves, his divine radiance softened by his love for her. Her mortal beauty made all the more precious by its fleeting nature. In time, Carinus became pregnant with Apollo's child, a demigod who would carry within him both the brilliance of the sun and the fragility of a mortal heart. Apollo was overjoyed. He believed he had found a perfect, faithful companion, a mortal who truly understood him. According to the ancient storytellers, like the Roman poet Ovid, Apollo had a sacred bird, a messenger and a spy. In this telling of the myth, the bird was a crow, and at this time all crows were a brilliant snowy white. They were beautiful, intelligent creatures, and Apollo's favorite was tasked with watching over the pregnant Carinus while the god was away on official business at his great oracle in Delphi. Leaving a bird, a creature famous for being a gossip, to watch over your girlfriend while you go away on a business trip is perhaps not the most brilliant idea Apollo ever had. It's the ancient Greek equivalent of giving your partner your phone and saying feel free to look through everything. Classicists and scholars still debate the role of Carinus in this myth. Is she a tragic, flawed human, whose story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of mortals getting involved with the divine? Or is she a symbol of human fickleness, of the inability of a temporary being to remain entirely faithful to an eternal one? The story goes that while Apollo was away, Carinus began to feel the immense, unbridgeable gulf between herself and her divine lover. He was a god. He was forever. She was a woman. Her life was a brief, flickering flame. And so her eyes turned to another. A mortal man, a prince from Arcadia named Ischys, who was visiting her father's court. His name was Ischys. He was a prince. He was handsome. And most importantly, he was there. Apollo was off doing important, world-altering god things in Delphi. Ischys was right there, being charming and, crucially, Not a terrifyingly powerful sun deity whose gaze could probably incinerate you. You can almost see her logic. And so, Caranus made a fateful, foolish choice. She betrayed the god who loved her, and perched on the branch of a cypress tree nearby, watching everything with its intelligent, black beady eyes, was the crow. Apollo's pure white crow. And it now had news to deliver to its master. The white crow, filled with a sense of self-important urgency, launches itself from the cypress branch. It has news. Terrible, scandalous, and deeply interesting news. It feels the weight of its own loyalty and importance, and it flies with all its might, heading south towards the great sanctuary of its master, the god Apollo. The journey is long. The crow soars over the rugged mountains and green valleys of Thessaly. It sees the small villages of men, the flocks of sheep on the hillsides, and the great, glittering expanse of the sea to the east. The world is peaceful, bathed in the golden light of its master's sun. Ovid tells the tale. On its journey, the white crow meets another bird, a raven perched on a branch. The raven, seeing the crow flying with such frantic purpose, asks where it is going. The crow puffs out its chest and proudly explains that it is on its way to report the infidelity of its master's lover, the Princess Caranus. The raven shakes its head sadly. It tries to warn the crow, telling it that this is a foolish errand. The raven explains that it was once the favorite bird of the goddess Athena, but was cast out and despised for being a tattletale, for reporting a secret it was not meant to know. The reward for bad news, the raven says, is often the blame for it. It is some of the most sensible advice in all of Greek mythology. The white crow, however, is a creature of immense pride and very little foresight. It dismisses the raven's warning as the bitter ramblings of a failed bird. It is convinced it is about to receive a great reward for its loyalty and its excellent work as a divine private investigator. And so it flies on. It arrives at last at Delphi, the sacred center of the world, where the great temple of Apollo clings to the slopes of Mount Parnassus. The air here smells of bay laurel, of incense, and of the strange, sweet vapor that rises from the fissure in the earth over which Apollo's priestess, the Pythia, gives her cryptic prophecies. The crow finds its master. Apollo is walking near the temple, his golden lyre in his hand, a look of peaceful contentment on his impossibly perfect face. The crow lands on his shoulder and, unable to contain its gossipy excitement, it tells him everything. It tells him of the Princess Caranus and the mortal Prince Ischys, leaving out no salacious detail. As the crow speaks, a change comes over the god. It is a terrifying transformation. The golden, benevolent light that always seemed to surround him dims and grows cold. The music of his lyre falls silent. His serene face becomes a mask of terrible divine fury. His eyes, which were the color of the warm sun, now glow with a cold, hard light. Apollo was a god of many contradictions. He was the god of music and poetry, but also the god of the plague, the far shooter whose arrows could deliver sudden, pestilential death to a city. He was the god of healing, but his anger, once roused, was absolute and without mercy. His moods were not subtle. He did not get merely annoyed. He went from benevolent sun god to cosmic death ray in the space of a heartbeat. There was no in-between. Mythologists often analyze this part of the story as a commentary on the nature of knowledge, a key theme for Apollo. As the god of prophecy, Apollo represents the pursuit of truth. Yet here, in his own moment of crisis, he acts not on a divine vision or a verified fact, but on the uncorroborated gossip of a bird. His divine insight is clouded by a very human, very potent jealousy. Before he acts on the news about Caranus, he turns his immediate, white-hot rage upon the messenger. He looks at the beautiful white crow on his shoulder, the bird that brought him this unbearable pain. The crow, which was probably expecting a reward, perhaps an extra shiny beetle or a promotion to chief avian advisor, is about to have a very, very bad day. It learns the lesson the raven tried to teach it. Never be the one to tell your boss his girlfriend is cheating on him. Just send an anonymous note, perhaps tied to a rock. Apollo speaks a curse. And as he speaks, the crow's brilliant snow-white feathers are instantly stained a deep, sooty, irredeemable black. Its voice, once clear, becomes a harsh, grating caw. The god banishes the bird from his sight forever. And from that day on, all crows have been black, their color a permanent, feathered reminder of a god's broken heart and a messenger's foolish mistake. With the crow cursed and cast away, Apollo stands alone, his face a mask of cold fury. He turns his gaze to the distant north, towards the kingdom of Thessaly, towards the palace where Caranus lives, still oblivious to the terrible news that has just been delivered. He reaches for his great silver bow. His wrath, now fully kindled, seeks its true target. The god's anger is a physical thing, a cold fire that seems to leach the warmth from the air at the sanctuary of Delphi. He holds his great silver bow, the weapon that can deliver plague to 1,000 homes, and with a hand that does not tremble, he notches a golden arrow. His divine sight, which can see all things under the sun, looks north, across the mountains and valleys, to the palace in Thessaly where Caranus sits, laughing with her new mortal lover, oblivious. There is no warning, no great chariot ride across the sky. The punishment of a god can be as swift and as silent as a thought. From his place at Delphi, Apollo draws the bowstring back to his cheek. He aims not with his eyes but with his very being, his will focused on a single terrible purpose. And he lets the arrow fly. It is a silver streak, a whisper of death that crosses the sky of Greece in a single silent heartbeat. It is unerring. It cannot be dodged. It is the will of a god made manifest. In the palace of her father, Caranus feels a sudden, sharp, and inexplicable pain in her side. She looks down to see the shaft of a golden arrow protruding from her robes. There is no sound, no great cry. She simply slumps to the ground, the life already beginning to fade from her eyes, and the moment the arrow leaves his bow, Apollo's white-hot rage evaporates, replaced by an immediate, soul-crushing wave of cold regret. He knows what he has done. In his pride and his hurt, he has destroyed the one mortal woman he truly loved. In a flash of golden light, he is there, kneeling at her side. He cradles her in his arms, but it is too late. This is a common, tragic theme in the stories of your people. The gods, for all their power and beauty, are often undone by their own passionate, very human-like emotions. Their love is intoxicating, but their jealousy is terrifying, and their power is so absolute that their momentary rages have permanent, heartbreaking consequences. Caranus looks up at the beautiful, terrible face of the god who has killed her, and with her final dying breath, she whispers to him. She tells him that in his anger, he has not just killed her. He has also killed his own son. The words strike Apollo like a physical blow. The child. In his rage, he had forgotten the child she was carrying. And now the great god of medicine, the master of the healing arts, is helpless. He holds her, trying all his divine skills, calling upon all his knowledge of salves and herbs, but he cannot undo what his own arrow has done. He cannot heal this wound. Even for a god there are limits. The Fates, the three ancient goddesses who spin and measure and cut the thread of every life, had decreed the end of Caranus' thread, and not even mighty Apollo could weave it back together. Scholars of Greek religion often debate the precise relationship between the Olympian gods and these older, more primordial forces. Were the Fates truly a power superior to the gods, an ancient law that even Zeus had to obey? Or were they simply a personification of the unchangeable order of the universe, a logic that the gods themselves could not violate without unraveling reality? Apollo's grief is terrible. He prepares a great funeral pyre for Caranus, as is the custom, building it high with sweet-smelling woods. He performs the rites for the woman he loved and has now lost forever. Being the girlfriend of a major Greek god came with many wonderful perks. You got to visit amazing places, you were protected by divine power. The only major downside was that the breakups were often incredibly dramatic and occasionally involved inescapable, divinely guided projectiles. The pyre is lit. The flames begin to lick at the dry wood, rising higher and higher. The fire begins to consume the body of the fallen princess. And as the heat washes over him, Apollo is shaken from his grief by one single urgent thought: the child, his son. He cannot allow his son to perish in the flames with his mother. He has already destroyed one life in his foolish anger. He will not destroy another. He steps forward, into the roaring heart of the funeral pyre, the flames parting before him, unable to touch his divine skin. And from the body of the dead Caronus, he performs a final miraculous act of medicine. He reaches into the flames and saves his child. Apollo stands amidst the roaring flames of the funeral pyre, a golden divine figure untouched by the heat that consumes the mortal world. For a god, fire is just another form of light. With a surgeon's precision and a father's desperate, newfound love, he performs the first and most miraculous cesarean section in all of mythology. He reaches into the flames and gently takes the living, healthy infant from the body of his dead mother. The child does not cry. He is born into a world of fire and grief, yet he is silent. His eyes are open, and he looks up at the brilliant, sorrowful face of his father with a strange, preternatural calm. This is Asclepius. His very name, some ancient scholars would later claim, comes from the Greek meaning to cut open, a permanent reminder of his unique and tragic birth. This origin story is the key to his entire existence. Asclepius is established from his very first breath as a figure who stands on the border between life and death. He is born from a dead mother, saved from the fire that consumed her. His whole life will be spent in that liminal space, that boundary between worlds, trying to pull others back from the brink that he so narrowly escaped. Apollo holds his infant son, his heart a painful mixture of immense love and profound sorrow. He looks at the tiny, perfect child, a being of both divine blood and mortal flesh. And he knows, with a certainty that chills him, that he cannot raise the boy himself. Mount Olympus, the home of the gods, is a beautiful but terrible place. It is a world of immense power, but also of petty jealousies, political intrigues, and sudden violent rages. It is no place for a vulnerable, half-mortal child to grow up. Raising a child on Olympus seems like a very bad idea. The queen of the gods, Hera, would probably be jealous of him for some reason. The war god, Ares, would try to teach him how to fight before he could walk. And Zeus? Well, Zeus has a notoriously terrible track record as a father figure. It's just not a healthy environment. Apollo knows he must find a foster parent, a teacher who can protect the boy from the dangers of both the mortal and the divine worlds, someone who can nurture the gift of healing that flows in his veins. And in all of ancient Greece, there is only one being wise enough, skilled enough, and most importantly, gentle enough for such a sacred task. It was a common theme in the old myths for a divine child to be raised by someone other than their Olympian parent. This fosterage often served a symbolic purpose. By being raised by a nymph in a forest, or a minor god in a remote cave, the hero would gain a connection to the natural, earthy, and ancient world, a wisdom that the great, powerful sky gods of Olympus often lacked. Scholars today often interpret this as a symbolic representation of the hero's education, the need to integrate both their civilized, human side and their wild, instinctual nature to become whole. It also seems to have been a common parenting strategy among the gods. I love this child, but I'm far too busy with my divine portfolio of managing prophecies and driving the sun across the sky. I'll just drop him off with a friendly, horse-bodied teacher for a decade or two. It's a hands-off approach, to be sure. Apollo steps out from the smoldering embers of the pyre, holding his son wrapped in a piece of his own golden cloak. The mortals who had gathered to mourn their princess, her family and her subjects, are stunned into a terrified, awestruck silence. They have just witnessed a miracle, a birth from death itself. They see the god, his face a mask of grief and love, holding a living child. That Asclepius's first few moments of life are certainly dramatic. Most babies just have to deal with a bright room and a tired-looking midwife. Asclepius gets a full-on mythological spectacle, complete with a divine curse, an inescapable arrow, and a funeral pyre. Without another word to the mortals, Apollo turns away from the scene of his own tragic mistake. His destination is now clear. He must take his son away from the world of human palaces and their fickle promises, and away from the world of Olympian gods and their terrible passions. He must take him to a place of peace, of nature, and of ancient wisdom. He begins his journey to the remote, forest-covered slopes of Mount Pelion. He is taking his son, the child born of fire, to the one being who can teach him how to transform the pain of his birth into a gift for all mankind. He is taking him to the great teacher of heroes. He is taking him to Chiron the centaur. Apollo's journey is swift as befits a god. He travels north from the world of men, carrying his infant son, and enters the ancient, untamed wilderness of Mount Pelion in Thessaly. This is not a mountain like Olympus, with its harsh, glittering peaks and its halls of divine judgment. Mount Pelion is a different kind of sacred space. It is a world of deep old forests, of sun-dappled glades, of hidden springs, and of profound green quiet. It is a world of nature, and it is the home of the centaurs. Now, for the most part, the centaurs of Greek mythology were not kindly creatures. They were a wild and savage race, half man and half horse, ruled by their basest animal passions. They were infamous for their drunkenness, their violence, and their chaotic, disruptive behavior. But there was one great exception, one centaur who was unlike all the others. His name was Chiron. Chiron was different in his very blood. While the other centaurs were descended from the cursed and arrogant king Ixion, Chiron was the son of the great Titan Cronus himself, and a beautiful ocean nymph. This made him older, wiser, and more divine than his savage cousins. He was immortal, learned, and famously gentle, and because of his immense wisdom and his kind heart, he had become the great teacher of heroes. If you were a promising young demigod in ancient Greece, you didn't go to a fancy boarding school. You were sent to Chiron. He had trained many of the greatest heroes you have ever heard of: Jason of the Argonauts, the mighty Heracles, the great warrior Achilles. Chiron was a one-centaur finishing school for the heroic elite. Apollo finds him in a peaceful meadow, surrounded by his students. You see him now, the powerful muscular body of a great horse, and rising from the withers, the strong torso, arms, and wise bearded face of a man. He is a figure of immense dignity and quiet strength. He sees Apollo approaching, holding the small bundle, and his eyes are full of a deep, sorrowful understanding. It must have been a slightly awkward conversation. "Greetings, Chiron." You can imagine Apollo saying, "I have made a rather terrible mess of my love life. There was a misunderstanding involving an arrow and a funeral pyre, and, well, now I have a baby. Could you possibly raise him for the next 18 years or so? I would be eternally grateful. Even for a god, it is a big ask." Chiron listens patiently to the whole tragic story, and then, without judgment, he holds out his strong human arms. Apollo gently places his infant son into the care of the great centaur. The image is a striking one. The massive, powerful creature, part beast, part god, holding the tiny, swaddled demigod with an almost maternal tenderness. Chiron was the perfect teacher for this specific child. He was not just a trainer of warriors. Apollo himself had taught Chiron the art of the lyre, and so he was a master musician. He was a philosopher and a teacher of ethics. And most importantly, he was a master of medicine and botany. He knew the secret properties of every root, every leaf, every flower that grew on the slopes of Mount Pelion. He knew how to make poultices to draw out infection, how to create salves to heal burns, how to set a broken bone, and how to use calming music to soothe a troubled mind. Scholars of mythology often see Chiron as a liminal figure, a bridge between worlds. As a centaur, he unites the world of man and the world of animals, the civilized and the wild. As the son of a Titan, he connects the old primordial gods with the new Olympians. His great purpose as a teacher is to impart this balanced, holistic wisdom to the young heroes who will go on to shape the world. Apollo looks at his son one last time, safe in the arms of the wise centaur. The god's duty as a father, for now, is done. He has successfully outsourced the most difficult parts of parenting. Now he can return to Olympus to focus on his real passions, creating magnificent poetry, delivering cryptic prophecies, and brooding magnificently. With a final grateful nod to Chiron, the god of light disappears in a flash. The tragic, fiery chapter of Asclepius's story is over. The peaceful, quiet, educational chapter is about to begin. Chiron turns, cradling the infant, and walks towards his home. You, the silent observer, follow him as he enters a large, dry cave on the mountainside. The air inside is cool and smells of dried herbs and wood smoke. This will be the schoolroom of the greatest physician the world has ever known. You are in Chiron's cave on Mount Pelion. But this is not a dark, damp, primitive shelter. It is a large, dry, and surprisingly civilized home. A place of peace and learning carved into the living rock of the mountain. The air within is cool and smells of cedarwood, drying herbs, and the gentle smoke from a central hearth. One part of the cave is a library, with scrolls of papyrus and wax tablets neatly stacked in niches carved from the stone. Another part is a music room, with lyres and flutes of all sizes resting against the wall. And a third area is an apothecary, with bunches of dried plants hanging from the ceiling, and clay pots filled with salves and ointments arranged on stone shelves. This is the schoolroom where Asclepius, the child born of fire, will grow into a man. And it is a strange and wonderful school. Your teacher is half horse. Your classmates, at various times, might include the moody, brilliant young warrior Achilles, the future adventurer Jason of the Argonauts, and perhaps a few friendly mountain nymphs who drop by for a music lesson. The school lunches are probably excellent, consisting entirely of fresh, organic, foraged foods. And there are no parent-teacher conferences, which is a definite plus for everyone involved. Chiron's educational philosophy is a holistic one. He believes in training the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. And so, Asclepius's first lessons are not in the healing arts. First, he must learn the basics of a civilized soul. Chiron, who was taught the lyre by Apollo himself, teaches the young boy music. The melodies are not for entertainment, but for therapy. He teaches him gentle, soothing songs to calm a troubled mind, and bright, energetic tunes to lift a heavy heart. He teaches him that harmony in music is a reflection of the harmony that should exist in a healthy body and a well-ordered soul. Next, he teaches him letters. Asclepius learns to read the great poets and to study the works of the philosophers. He learns about ethics, about justice, about the nature of the gods and of men. He is a quiet and intensely curious student. Unlike Chiron's other famous pupil, Achilles, who was famous for his fiery temper and his martial prowess, Asclepius is gentle, thoughtful, and compassionate. You can imagine the scene. Chiron is trying to teach a complex, calming melody on the lyre. Asclepius is listening intently, his fingers carefully mimicking his master's. Achilles is probably in the corner trying to figure out if he could use the lyre as a projectile weapon. Different students have different aptitudes. Scholars of classical education often debate whether the figure of Chiron represents a real pedagogical tradition or a later, idealized philosophical model. Is he a memory of an older shamanistic wisdom, a nature-based knowledge that was lost to the city-states? Or is he a literary invention, a noble savage figure created by later Greek writers to serve as a model for the perfect, well-rounded education? As the years pass, a deep and loving bond forms between the great ancient centaur and the quiet, lonely demigod. Chiron is the only father Asclepius will ever truly know. He provides the stability, the wisdom, and the unconditional kindness that his own brilliant, passionate, and dangerously impulsive father, Apollo, never could. And as Asclepius grows, his true nature, his innate calling begins to reveal itself. While the other young heroes are practicing their spear throwing or wrestling, Asclepius is more interested in the racks of drying herbs in Chiron's cave. He asks his teacher the name of every plant. He wants to know what this root is for, what that leaf can cure. He shows a profound and gentle empathy for all living things. If a small animal is injured, he is the one who will tend to it, binding its wounds with a surprising delicacy. It becomes clear to Chiron that Asclepius has inherited his father's divine gift for healing, but that this gift is tempered by a mortal compassion that Apollo himself has never possessed. One day, Chiron decides that the boy's general education is complete. It is time to begin his specialized training. It is time to nurture the gift that the fates have so clearly given him. He leads the young Asclepius out of the cave, away from the scrolls and the lyres, and into the great living classroom that is the mountain itself. The formal lessons are over. The true apprenticeship is about to begin. The slopes of Mount Pelion are now your classroom, and the earth itself is your textbook. Chiron leads you on long, quiet walks through the ancient forests and high alpine meadows. Every plant becomes a lesson. Every flower, every leaf, every root holds a secret, and Chiron teaches you how to listen to them. He shows you a willow tree growing by a stream. He has you chew on a piece of its bitter bark, and he explains that it can ease a fever and soothe an aching head. He points out a patch of delicate poppies, explaining their powerful dual nature. Their juice can bring a deep, dreamless sleep and grant freedom from the greatest pain. But used incorrectly, it is a dangerous poison that can stop a heart. This, he stresses, is the first and greatest lesson of medicine. The line between a cure and a poison is often just a matter of dosage. The foundation of all ancient medicine was this deep, intimate knowledge of the botanical world. The work of the great Greek physicians like Hippocrates, and later pharmacologists like Dioscorides, was primarily the cataloging of hundreds of plants and their specific medicinal uses. The wisdom Chiron is imparting to you is the real, living heart of this ancient science. His lessons are very hands-on. This one, he might say, holding up a common-looking leafy green, makes a wonderful tea that will calm a nervous stomach. He will then point to another plant nearby that looks almost identical to your untrained eye. And this one, he will say with a very serious look, will make you profoundly sick for 3 days. It is very important not to mix them up. The final exam for this class, you imagine, would be quite stressful. He tells you the ancient stories associated with the plants. He shows you a flower with a pure white bloom and a strange black root. He tells you this is moly, the magical herb that the god Hermes once gave to the hero Odysseus to protect him from the enchantments of the sorceress Circe. This teaches you that some plants have powers that are not just for the body, but for the spirit as well. But the lessons are not limited to plants. Chiron teaches you the practical arts of the physician. You learn how to clean a wound with wine and bind it with clean linen. You learn how to use direct pressure to stop a bleeding artery. He shows you how to recognize the way a bone is broken, and how to set it properly using straight, sturdy branches as splints and strips of soft leather to hold them in place. He even teaches you some basic surgery, which you practice on a very unlucky, but ultimately grateful goat with a broken leg. It is a messy business, but you discover you have a natural talent for it. Your hands are steady, your touch is gentle, and your demeanor is calm. The goat is less convinced at first, but eventually seems to see the benefits of a well-set leg. Historians of medicine often debate how much of early Greek medical practice was based on this kind of empirical observation, and how much was tied to magic and religious ritual. The figure of Chiron, who is both a scientific teacher of botany and a mythic being himself, perfectly embodies this intersection. Was the effectiveness of a treatment seen as coming purely from the chemical properties of the plant? Or did it also require the recitation of the correct healing prayer, the paean to his father Apollo? For Chiron, the physical and the spiritual were likely two inseparable parts of the same whole. You are a gifted and eager student. You absorb all of Chiron's knowledge with a speed and an intuitive understanding that is astonishing. It is clear that the divine blood of Apollo flows in your veins. You soon begin to innovate on your own. Chiron shows you a standard recipe for a poultice. You suggest adding a bit of honey to the mixture, which you have noticed seems to keep wounds cleaner. Chiron is impressed. It is the moment every teacher dreams of, when the student begins to teach the master. It probably made him a little misty-eyed. Years pass in this peaceful green world. You grow from a boy into a man, and your skill as a healer is now said to surpass even that of your legendary teacher. One day, Chiron tells you that there is nothing more he can teach you. Your apprenticeship is over. You have mastered the arts of the body and the spirit, of the root and the leaf. It is time, he says, for you to leave the safety of Mount Pelion. It is time for you to take your unique, divine gift out into the world of suffering mortals, the world that so desperately needs it. And so you say farewell to your teacher, to the only father you have ever known. With a heavy heart but a clear sense of purpose, you leave the peaceful green slopes of Mount Pelion behind and walk down into the world of men. You are Asclepius now, the physician. You carry with you a simple leather satchel filled with the herbs and remedies you prepared with Chiron, and you lean on a plain sturdy wooden staff as you walk. You are not a prince or a warrior. You are a humble itinerant doctor, and your journey has begun. The world you enter is a world of suffering. In the small villages and dusty towns of ancient Greece, life is hard. You see farmers with bodies bent and broken from a lifetime of labor. You see children with raging fevers that the local healers cannot quell. You see wounds that have festered from lack of proper care. Disease and injury are a constant, terrifying presence. But where others see only despair, you see a place where your skills are needed. Your resolve is strengthened. You are driven by the deep, innate compassion that is your mother's legacy, and the divine gift for healing that is your father's. Your fame begins in a small, unremarkable village. A farmer has fallen from an olive tree and his leg is badly broken, the bone jutting out at an unnatural angle. The local village healer has declared it a lost cause. But you, with the knowledge learned from Chiron, calmly and gently wash the wound. You give the man a drink of a poppy-based draught to dull the pain, and then, with a strength and confidence that belies your gentle demeanor, you set the bone perfectly. You bind it with clean linen and splint it with sturdy branches. The villagers look on in another town. You are called to the bedside of a small child, burning with a fever that has lasted for days. Her parents are weeping, preparing for the worst. You do not offer sacrifices or perform magical rites. You simply brew a tea from the willow bark and other cooling herbs Chiron showed you. You sit with the child, bathing her forehead with cool water and playing a soft, soothing melody on a small lyre, just as Chiron taught you. By morning, the fever has broken. This is the new kind of medicine you bring to the world. It is a medicine based on observation, on practical skill, and on a deep understanding of the natural world. But it is not a cold, clinical science. You treat the patient's spirit as much as their body. Your calm, reassuring presence, your gentle touch, your soothing music. These are as much a part of the cure as any herb. Your bedside manner is excellent. You're calm, you're reassuring, and you don't tell the family that the fever is because they angered a minor river nymph. You just give the child some tea. It's a major improvement in the patient experience. This approach reflects the very ideals that would later form the foundation of the Hippocratic school of medicine, a focus on rational diagnosis and treating the patient as a whole person. In the myth, you, Asclepius, are the divine forerunner of this great intellectual tradition. Word of the young, impossibly skilled, and deeply kind physician begins to spread. You become a periodoux, a traveling doctor, walking from town to town, sought out by the sick and the injured. You quickly become the most in-demand doctor in all of Greece. Other, older healers are probably getting quite annoyed. It's hard to compete with a handsome demigod, who is also very, very good at his job and happens to be the son of the actual god of healing. It's a rather unfair advantage in the medical marketplace. Classicists debate whether the myth of Asclepius as a wandering physician inspired the real-life traveling doctors of ancient Greece, or if the historical reality of the Periodoutes was projected backwards onto the myth of the god. Did the stories of this compassionate healer inspire real doctors to travel and serve? Or did the Greeks simply create a god in the image of the best, most dedicated doctors they already knew? Your reputation grows with every successful cure. The stories of your skill become legendary. Have you heard of the physician Asclepius? People whisper. He set my cousin's leg so well he can now run faster than his own goats. And he doesn't even charge that much. Just a humble offering of a chicken or a small cake. The word-of-mouth reviews, if they had existed, would have been spectacular. One hot afternoon, you are resting by the side of the road, leaning against your simple wooden staff. Your journey has been long, and your satchel of herbs is running low. You have proven your skill. You have shown your compassion. But your story is about to take another mythic turn. A chance encounter in this quiet, dusty spot is about to bestow upon you a new level of knowledge and give you the powerful symbol for which you will be known for all time. As you rest in the cool shade of an olive tree, leaning on your simple wooden staff, a small creature moves slowly into the clearing. It is a snake. It is not moving with the fluid grace of a healthy snake, but dragging its body painfully. You see that it is badly injured, perhaps attacked by a bird of prey. Your compassion, which extends to all living things, is stirred. You are a physician, and a patient has come to you. You gently approach the snake. It does not try to flee. You carefully pick it up. With the delicate touch you learned from Chiron, you examine its wounds. You see that they are too grievous. Even with all your skill, you know there is nothing you can do. As you hold it, the snake gives one last, faint hiss and then goes still. It is dead. Saddened by your failure, you lay the small, lifeless body on a flat stone. But as you are about to turn away, a second snake glides out from the tall grass. It is the first snake's mate. It approaches the dead snake and nudges it with its head. Seeing that it is lifeless, the second snake turns and disappears back into the undergrowth. You watch intrigued. A moment later it returns, and in its mouth it is carrying a small leafy green herb with a pale star-like flower, a plant you have never seen before on all your travels with Chiron. The snake glides to the stone and gently lays the herb upon the mouth of its dead mate. And then a miracle happens. You watch breathless as the dead snake begins to stir. Its wounds seem to close, and a healthy color returns to its scales. It lifts its head, and then, as if just waking from a deep sleep, it coils around its partner. The two snakes look at you for a moment with their unblinking, ancient eyes, and then together, they glide away into the grass and disappear. You are left staring in stunned silence at the small herb they have left behind on the stone. You have just witnessed a power beyond anything you knew. You, the greatest physician in the world, were helpless. But the secret knowledge of the earth itself, brought to you by a serpent, holds the power to reverse death. This is a pretty significant upgrade in medical knowledge. Before, you were very good with fevers and broken bones. Now you have just been shown a plant that apparently has a bring back from the dead feature. This is going to dramatically expand your practice. The snake in the ancient world was a powerful and complex symbol. Because it sheds its skin each year, appearing new and reborn, it was a universal symbol of rejuvenation, healing, and immortality. Its connection to the earth also associated it with deep, secret chthonic wisdom. This made the serpent the perfect creature to be the familiar of the god of medicine. And in gratitude for this incredible gift of knowledge, you take your simple walking staff, the one that has supported you on all your journeys, and you entwine the image of a single graceful serpent around it. This becomes your emblem, the symbol of your art, the rod of Asclepius. It represents the perfect fusion of your skills. The staff is the sturdy, practical, earthly knowledge you learned from Chiron. The serpent is the secret, miraculous, life-giving power of nature itself. It is important to note that your staff, the true, ancient symbol of medicine, has only one snake. A different staff, the caduceus, belonging to the god Hermes, has two snakes and a pair of wings. The caduceus is a symbol of commerce, travel, and negotiation. Due to a historical mix-up, the two-serpent staff of Hermes is often mistakenly used as a symbol of medicine today. But you wouldn't want to go to an ancient Greek hospital and see the symbol of Hermes on the door. He was the god of merchants, but also of thieves. It's not the most reassuring logo for a healthcare provider. Scholars debate the origin of the serpent's connection to healing in the Mediterranean world. Was it an indigenous Greek belief, or was it, like so many other things, imported from the older civilizations of the Near East and Egypt, where serpent gods and goddesses also held powerful roles as healers and protectors? You carefully take the small, miraculous herb and place it in your medical pouch. You now possess a knowledge, a power, that no other mortal has ever had. You have the ultimate medical tool in your satchel. It's one thing to be known as the doctor who is very good with sprained ankles. It's another thing entirely to be known as the doctor who can occasionally reverse the entire process of being dead. It will be wonderful for your reputation, but you can see how it might cause some very serious problems down the line. With your new iconic staff in hand, you continue your journey. Your fame, which was already great, is about to become legendary. The stories of your cures will grow more and more miraculous, but they will always be rooted in the same gentle compassion that led you to pity a single injured snake by the side of the road. Your fame spreads like a gentle, healing wave across the Greek world. But the stories that people tell in the marketplaces and whisper in their homes are not just about your miraculous skill. They are, more often, about your extraordinary kindness. You are not like the other heroes of your age. You do not win fame through acts of great strength or violence. You win it through acts of great compassion. Imagine a man in a small fishing village who has been slowly going blind for years. The world has become a gray, blurry prison for him. Other physicians have declared his condition a curse from the gods, a hopeless case. But you are summoned, and you do not begin with potions or sharp instruments. You simply sit with the man for a long afternoon, on a bench overlooking the sea. You listen to his story, you ask him about his fears, and then you play your lyre, a soft, simple melody that seems to untangle the knots of anxiety in his soul. Only then do you begin the treatment, washing his eyes with a gentle infusion of herbs. And slowly, miraculously, the grayness begins to recede. His sight returns, not perfectly, but enough to see the faces of his grandchildren again. The healing was in the herbs, yes, but it was also in the listening. Your approach is revolutionary. You actually talk to your patients. You treat them not as a collection of symptoms, but as a whole person. For many, just being treated with this level of dignity and kindness is half the cure. It's a much better system than the previous medical model, which was mostly just blaming a minor river god for your indigestion in another town. You are brought to a child who is wasting away with a fever, refusing all food. Her parents are frantic. You enter the small, dark, stuffy room where the child lies. And your first prescription is not for a medicine, but for a change in environment. You have them open the shutters to let in the sunlight and the fresh air. You prescribe a simple diet of cool water and nourishing broth. And you sit with the child, not as a doctor, but as a friend, telling her stories of the animals on Mount Pelion. Slowly, her spirits lift, her appetite returns, and the fever breaks. You understood that the sickness was not just in her body, but in her world. This holistic approach, which would later be championed by the great historical physician Hippocrates, was at the core of your myth. The Hippocratic school would teach that a doctor must consider a patient's diet, their environment, and their emotional state. and that the physician's primary role is to assist the healing power of nature itself. You, Asclepius, are the divine embodiment of this gentle, observational medicine. As your fame grows, so does your family. You have several children, and they follow in your footsteps. Your daughters, in particular, become famous in their own right, their very names becoming synonymous with the art of healing. The two most renowned are Hygeia, who becomes the goddess of good health, cleanliness, and sanitation, the origin of our word hygiene, and Panacea, who becomes the goddess of remedies and cure-alls. Having daughters named Hygiene and Cure-all must have made for some interesting family dynamics. Hygeia, have you washed your hands? Panacea, can you please fix this broken pot? They were probably very helpful around the house. Historians debate whether these figures were originally independent health goddesses from local cults, who were later adopted into the Asclepius myth to create a neat, unified family of healing. Or were they always understood as allegorical personifications of the different facets of your own great skill? You travel from city to city, and you treat everyone, rich and poor alike. The wealthy might give you gold, but you are just as likely to accept a simple chicken, a basket of figs, or a handmade clay pot from a poor farmer as payment. Your mission is not to gain wealth, but to ease suffering. You are a new kind of hero. Heracles' solution to most problems was to hit them with a club. Your solution is to offer a nice herbal tea and ask how the problem is feeling today. It is a different and frankly much more relaxing approach to saving the world. Eventually, your fame becomes so great that you can no longer serve all the people who need you. For every person you heal, there are 100 more waiting. The life of a traveling doctor is no longer enough. You realize that you must create a permanent place of healing, a sanctuary where all who are suffering can come to seek a cure. You need to build a home for your art. You need to build a temple. Your travels now have a new purpose. You are no longer just seeking out the sick. You are seeking a home for the art of healing itself. You understand that a physician's skill is not enough. The environment, the atmosphere, the very spirit of the place where a patient is treated is just as important as any medicine. You search for the perfect location to build the world's first great hospital, a sanctuary dedicated to health and restoration. After much searching, you find the perfect spot. It is a quiet, beautiful valley in the Peloponnese, a place called Epidaurus. The air here is clean and pure. There are sacred springs with fresh, clear water. The valley is sheltered by hills covered in peaceful pine forests. It is a place that feels naturally, profoundly healthy. Here you decree your first great healing temple will be built. This is the first Asclepian. The historical Asclepian at Epidaurus would grow over the centuries to become the most important and famous healing center in the entire ancient world. But in your time, in the myth, it begins as a simple, elegant expression of your philosophy. The atmosphere is one of serene tranquility. This is not a place of sickness and despair, but a place of peace and hope. The buildings are constructed of white limestone that seems to gather the sunlight. There are open-air colonnades, gardens planted with fragrant herbs, and shaded groves of trees where patients can walk and rest. The gentle sound of running water from the sacred springs is a constant, soothing presence. This is less like a hospital and more like a luxury health spa from the ancient world. The prescription for your ailment might include watching a play, taking a gentle walk through a sacred grove, and getting a good night's sleep. It's a much more pleasant experience than most modern clinics. The complex is made up of several key buildings. There is the temple itself, dedicated to you, Asclepius, where grateful patients will leave their offerings. There is a large gymnasium because you believe that gentle, prescribed exercise is crucial for a healthy body. There are baths for ritual purification. And most importantly, there is the abaton, a long, quiet, and sacred dormitory where the patients will sleep. The entire philosophy of the Asclepian is built on the idea of creating a therapeutic environment. You believe that by removing a patient from the stresses and anxieties of their everyday life and placing them in this beautiful, peaceful, and sacred space, the healing powers of their own body What the later Greek physicians would call the vis medicatrix naturae, the healing force of nature, will be awakened and strengthened as your temple's fame grows. People begin to arrive from all over the Greek world. They leave offerings after they have been healed, and these offerings are often small, sculpted representations of the body part that was cured. These are called anatomical votives. Archaeologists at the ruins of Epidaurus and other Asclepian temples have found thousands of these small terracotta or marble sculptures. A pair of ears for someone who was deaf, a set of eyes for someone who was blind, a leg, a hand, a foot. The temple walls must have been covered in these little body parts. It would have looked a bit strange, like a divine lost and found for anatomical components, but the sentiment behind each one was a powerful testament to a prayer that was answered. Historians debate the extent to which the Asclepius practiced what we would call scientific medicine versus what could be described as faith healing. Were the priests of these temples, the Asclepiads, trained physicians who were performing real medical treatments under the cover of religious ritual? Or was the entire process based on the immense power of belief and the placebo effect? The evidence suggests a sophisticated blend of both. The temples prescribed real, practical therapies like diet, exercise, and herbal remedies, but these were always combined with the deep and abiding faith in the power of the god. The Asclepian becomes a beacon of hope. The lame, the sick, the desperate, they make the long pilgrimage to your valley, and here they find not just a doctor, but a holistic system of care for the body, the mind, and the spirit. It's the ultimate destination for anyone with a mysterious ailment. Instead of searching symptoms on the ancient Greek internet and convincing yourself you have a fatal case of unbalanced humors, you just make a journey to Epidaurus. The customer reviews are spectacular, but the most sacred and mysterious part of the healing process, the very heart of the Asclepian's power, did not happen in the gymnasium or the baths. It happened at night, in the deep silence of the abaton. It happened while the patients slept, when the god himself was said to walk the halls and visit them in their dreams. Imagine now that you are no longer the silent observer of Asclepius's life, but a direct participant in his legacy. You are a patient. You are a pilgrim. You have traveled for weeks, perhaps from a distant island or a bustling city, to the great sanctuary at Epidaurus. You have come seeking a cure for a lingering illness, a pain that no local physician has been able to heal. You have come to place your faith in the god. The healing process is a slow and deliberate ritual. It does not begin with medicine, but with purification. For several days you must prepare yourself. You abstain from wine and certain foods. You perform a ritual cleansing, bathing in the cold, clear waters of the temple's sacred spring. And you make a small, humble offering at the temple altar, perhaps a simple honey cake, a gesture to show the god your piety and respect. Only when you are spiritually and physically clean are you deemed ready for the true healing to begin. As dusk falls, a priest leads you and the other patients to the most sacred building in the sanctuary, the abaton. It is a long, silent, colonnaded hall. It is open to the cool night air on one side, and the only light comes from a few flickering oil lamps that cast long, soft shadows. Other patients are already here, lying quietly on simple pallets on the stone floor, their faces filled with a mixture of hope and reverence. A profound, hushed quiet fills the space. This is the ritual of incubation, the heart of the healing cult of Asclepius. You have come here to sleep, but it is the most important sleep of your life. For it is believed that in this sacred space, as you lie between waking and sleeping, the god himself will visit you in your dreams. He will either cure you with his divine touch, or he will give you a clear vision, a prescription for the treatment you must follow. It is the most high-pressure nap you will ever take. You have to fall asleep and have a very specific, medically relevant dream on demand. If you just dream about showing up to market without any clothes on, it's probably not going to be very helpful for your condition. You lie down on your pallet. A priest might give you a gentle herbal tea to help you relax. You close your eyes, listening to the gentle sounds of the night, the chirping of crickets in the nearby grove, the whisper of the wind through the stone columns. You fall into a deep, suggestible, hypnotic sleep. And in your dream he comes to you. He appears just as the stories say. A tall, kind-faced man with a gentle, compassionate expression, leaning on his famous serpent-entwined staff. He does not speak of gods or magic. He simply asks you what is wrong. In the strange logic of the dream, you explain your ailment. He listens patiently. He might then reach out and touch the afflicted part of your body with his warm hand. Or he might simply look at you and give you a simple, clear instruction. You must walk in the sun for an hour each morning, he might say. Or, find the root of the silver-leafed plant and make a tea. Or even something more cryptic. Offer a tribute of a white rooster. In the morning, you awaken with the memory of the dream vivid in your mind. You feel different. Perhaps your ailment is gone. Or perhaps you are simply filled with a profound sense of peace and a clear sense of what you must do next. You and the other patients then go to the temple priests, the Asclepius, and you tell them your dreams. The priest's job is to interpret the divine message. This was a quirky and brilliant part of the system. If you dreamed that Asclepius told you to eat a snake, the priest would not hand you a live reptile. He would interpret the god's message, perhaps telling you that the dream meant you should eat a specific type of root that looks like a snake. The dream provided the divine diagnosis. The priest provided the practical prescription. This system put a lot of faith in the priest's ability to interpret dreams. If you dreamed a giant chicken told you to paint yourself blue, the priest had to figure out what that meant for your sore knee. Ah yes, the chicken represents your diet. And blue means you need more fish. It was a very interpretive science. Sociologists and psychologists still debate the nature of these healing dreams. Were they genuine divine visitations? Were they hallucinations brought on by fasting and the power of suggestion? Or were they a powerful form of psychotherapy, where the patient's own subconscious mind, in a state of deep belief in safety, generated the insight needed to begin the healing process? You feel refreshed and hopeful. The man on the pallet next to you is complaining to a priest that he just dreamed he was being chased by a giant loaf of bread. Apparently, not all divine messages are created equal. As you lie there just before drifting back to sleep, you hear a faint, dry rustling sound on the stone floor nearby. It is a sound that might terrify you elsewhere, but here it is a sound of peace. It is the sound of one of the temple's most famous and holy residents, making its silent rounds in the darkness. It is the sound of a sacred snake. The sound you hear in the darkness of the abaton is the dry, rustling sound of scales moving slowly across the cool stone floor. In any other circumstance, this sound might send a jolt of fear through you. But not here. Here, in this sacred space, it is a sound of hope. It is one of the famous Asclepian snakes, making its silent, nightly rounds through the sleeping hall. In the temples of Asclepius, snakes were not feared. They were revered. They were believed to be the living messengers and physical embodiments of the god himself. These were not dangerous, venomous creatures. The species kept and cared for by the temple priests was a large but famously placid and gentle type of European rat snake, a creature known today as the Asclepian snake in honor of your god. They glided freely through the sanctuary, and their presence, especially here in the abaton, was considered a powerful omen of the god's favor. The symbolism of the serpent was at the very heart of your cult. You have seen how a snake sheds its old, worn skin and emerges with a fresh, new one. For your people, this was the perfect, living metaphor for rebirth, rejuvenation, and the casting off of sickness to be replaced by new health. The snake was a creature that seemed to hold the secret of immortality in its very body. As you lie on your pallet, you hope for a visit. The greatest blessing a patient could receive during their night of incubation was a direct interaction with one of these holy creatures. It was believed that the saliva of the sacred snakes contained a potent healing power. If a snake were to glide up to a sleeping patient and gently lick their afflicted body part, a festering wound, a clouded eye, a painful joint, It was considered a direct physical cure delivered by Asclepius himself. It's a form of therapy that might be a little startling to a modern patient. Waking up to find a 5-foot-long snake gently licking your ankle is not part of most contemporary treatment plans. But here, in the quiet darkness of Epidaurus, it was the greatest miracle you could hope for. In addition to the snakes, the sacred grounds of the Asclepian were often home to another healing animal, the dog. Inscriptions and testimonials left by cured patients at Epidaurus tell stories of sacred dogs, also believed to be servants of the god, who would come and lick the wounds of the sick, bringing about their recovery. The entire sanctuary was a kind of gentle, holy, and therapeutic petting zoo. So your primary treatment options seem to be either getting licked by a snake or getting licked by a dog. You hope they also have the option for just a nice cup of tea and a good night's rest. If you're not particularly fond of being licked by reptiles, zoologists and classicists have long debated how this specific species of snake came to be associated with Asclepius, and how it spread with his cult from Greece to the far corners of the Roman Empire. Was the Asclepian snake native to all these regions? Or did the priests, when establishing a new temple in a new land, physically transport live specimens from the mother temple at Epidaurus? Genetic studies of the modern snake populations suggest the latter. The Romans, it seems, actively introduced this species into new territories, making the snakes one of the earliest known examples of an animal being transported across a continent for purely religious and medical purposes. You lie still, listening. The dry rustling sound comes closer. You can feel the faint, cool draft of air as the snake passes by your palate. You do not move. You do not feel fear. You feel a profound sense of peace. The presence of this creature is a physical manifestation of the god's power, a silent, living promise of healing. Right here in the room with you, you feel a faint, dry touch on your arm. Is it the god? Is it the healing serpent? You open your eyes a tiny crack. No, it's just a dead leaf that has blown in from the courtyard. The disappointment is immense. You close your eyes again and go back to hoping for a slightly more significant divine intervention. The morning comes. You have had your dream. You have felt the sacred presence in the abaton. You leave the temple filled with a sense of hope and a clear path towards your cure. This is the pinnacle of your work as Asclepius. You have created a system of healing that is gentle, compassionate, and astonishingly effective. You have brought comfort to thousands. But this very success, this incredible divine power over sickness and health, is beginning to attract attention from the highest and most powerful beings in the cosmos. Your greatest triumphs, born of your deepest compassion, have planted the seeds of your own destruction. For you are about to take your art one step too far. The stories of your cures become the stuff of legend. They are whispered in every corner of the Greek world, growing grander with each retelling. You are no longer just Asclepius the skilled physician. You are Asclepius the divine healer, the savior, the man who can turn back the tide of sickness and despair. And as your fame grows, so do the expectations and the demands placed upon you. The sick and the dying are brought to your temples from all corners of the land. But then one day, a different kind of procession arrives at your sanctuary at Epidaurus. It is not a hopeful patient carried on a litter. It is a funeral bier. A great king, some stories say it was Minos of Crete, others say Theseus of Athens, has come to you not with a sick son, but with a dead one. In the most famous version of the myth, the body is that of Hippolytus, the handsome son of Theseus. He was a virtuous young man, a devotee of the huntress goddess Artemis, but he was tragically killed, his body broken and dragged to death by his own horses when his chariot was wrecked by a monstrous bull sent from the sea by the god Poseidon. The grieving king falls to his knees before you. He is a powerful ruler, a man accustomed to giving orders, but here he is just a father, his heart broken. He begs you to do the impossible. He offers you all the gold in his kingdom, all the power of his armies, if you will only use your divine gifts to bring his beloved son back from the cold, gray land of the dead. This is the ultimate challenge. and you feel a profound sense of conflict. Your entire life, your entire purpose, has been the alleviation of suffering and the preservation of life. It is the very core of your being. But this is a different matter. This is not just healing a sickness. This is reversing a fundamental law of the cosmos. This is a direct transgression against the domains of the fates, who cut the thread of life, and of Hades, the grim lord of the underworld. Your wise teacher Chiron would have warned you against such an act of pride. This is a request that goes well beyond the usual. Can you take a look at this nasty cough? This is a major escalation in patient care. The celestial paperwork for this must be a nightmare. Reason for visit: currently deceased. The myth of Asclepius at this very moment becomes one of the world's first explorations of a classic bioethical dilemma. Does a physician have a moral obligation to preserve life at all costs, even if it means playing God? Or is there a natural order, a wisdom in the finality of death, that should not be violated for any reason? You look at the king's tear-streaked face. You look at the body of the young prince, struck down in the prime of his life, and your compassion, the defining trait of your character, begins to win out over your caution. You are a healer. How can you refuse to heal? What is death, after all, but the final greatest illness? This is the moment of hubris. In the Greek worldview, hubris was not just arrogance. It was the specific and dangerous sin of a mortal trying to overstep their natural boundaries, to act like a god. It was an act that the gods, and especially Zeus, never ever left unpunished. The number one rule in the How to Be a Demigod and Not Get Smited by Zeus handbook is, don't show up the gods at their own game. Curing the sick is one thing. It's what your father Apollo does. Canceling death is a direct challenge to the authority of Hades, and a violation of the universe's fundamental operating system. It's like poking a sleeping bear. A very large, very powerful, and notoriously thunderbolt-wielding bear. After a long internal struggle, you make your decision. You agree to try. You ask the grieving king and his retinue to leave you. This is not a procedure that you want a live audience for. If it goes wrong, it will just be deeply awkward. And if it goes right, it might be even more so, because you will have just broken the biggest rule in the cosmos, and you probably don't want a lot of witnesses. They leave you. You are alone in the quiet, sun-dappled sanctuary, alone with the body of the dead prince laid out on a stone slab. The air is still and heavy with anticipation. You open your simple leather satchel, the one you have carried since you left Mount Pelion. You reach past the familiar, common herbs for healing fevers and soothing pain. You reach all the way to the bottom to a small secret pouch. And from it, you take the strange, pale, star-flowered herb that the grateful serpent showed you so long ago. The herb that holds the power over life and death itself. You stand over the body of the young prince, Hippolytus, laid out on a cool stone slab in the quietest part of the sanctuary. The air is still and silent, heavy with the scent of pine and dried herbs. You hold the small, pale, star-flowered herb in your hand. The secret the serpent gifted you. This is the moment you have both sought and dreaded. This is the moment you challenge death itself. The process is not one of wild magic, but of careful, methodical healing taken to its ultimate extreme. First, you act as the physician you were trained to be. You gently clean the terrible wounds from the chariot crash. With the skill Chiron taught you, you carefully set the broken bones, binding them with splints. You prepare the physical vessel, making the body whole again, as if it were for a living patient. You are treating death not as an ending, but as the most grievous of all injuries. When the body has been tended to with the utmost care and respect, you begin the second, more secret part of the cure. You take the precious herb and, using a small stone mortar, you crush it into a fragrant paste, perhaps mixing it with a few drops of water from the temple's sacred spring. Then, with a prayer to your father Apollo, the giver of light and life, you anoint the cold lips of the prince with the paste. You place another small amount over his heart. Finally, you take up your lyre and begin to play a soft, low, and deeply resonant melody, a healing song designed to call a spirit back from the shadows, a lullaby in reverse. For a long time nothing happens. The only sound is the gentle music from your lyre. And then you see it. A faint flicker of the prince's eyelid. A small, almost imperceptible twitch. A shallow, halting breath enters his chest. The pale, waxy color of his skin begins to recede, replaced by a faint, living warmth. The color returns to his lips. And then his eyes open. He looks around, dazed and confused, but he is breathing. He is warm. He is alive. You have done the impossible. The resurrection of a mortal was a rare and deeply perilous theme in Greek mythology. It was the ultimate transgression of the boundary between the mortal and divine realms, an act that always brought with it terrible consequences. You have performed your greatest cure, and in doing so you have committed your greatest crime. Hippolytus sits up. He is probably very confused. The last thing he remembers is being in a rather nasty chariot accident involving a sea monster. Waking up in a quiet temple with a handsome doctor leaning over him is a significant improvement, but still quite disorienting. You lead the resurrected prince out into the sunlight to meet his waiting father. The king's reaction is one of pure, unadulterated joy. He weeps, he laughs, he embraces his son. He falls at your feet, calling you a savior, a true God on earth, promising you all the gold and glory in his kingdom. But as you look at this happy reunion, you do not feel triumphant. You feel a quiet, cold knot of dread forming in your stomach. You have succeeded in your art, but you know you have failed a more fundamental law. You have thrown a great stone into the placid lake of cosmic order, and you know the ripples will soon reach the shores of the underworld, and even the peaks of Mount Olympus. What becomes of a man brought back from the dead? Some versions of the myth say that Hippolytus, no longer truly belonging to the world of mortals, was taken away by his patron goddess, Artemis, to live out his second life in a sacred, hidden grove in Italy. Being brought back from the dead seems wonderful, but the aftercare is complicated. You can't just go back to your old life. What did you do this weekend? Oh, the usual. Was tragically killed by a sea monster, spent some time in the underworld, got resurrected by a demigod. It makes for awkward small talk at parties. Literary scholars see this moment as the turning point in your story as a perfect Greek tragedy. Your greatest strength, your unmatched skill as a healer, has now become the direct cause of your own downfall. Your compassion has led you to commit an unforgivable act of hubris. Meanwhile, in another department of the cosmic bureaucracy, someone is noticing a discrepancy in the accounts. An immortal being who is famously meticulous about his paperwork is about to realize he is missing one of his subjects. Our story now pans away from the joyous scene at Epidaurus, down, deep into the earth, to a cold, silent, and gloomy kingdom. We have arrived in the throne room of Hades, the Lord of the Dead. He is reviewing the register of newly arrived souls. He sees the name Hippolytus has been entered, but the soul itself has not arrived for processing. He frowns. This is an irregularity, and Hades does not like irregularities. The throne room of Hades is not a place of fire and torment. That is a later, different mythology. In the Greek imagination, the underworld is a vast, cold, silent, and deeply melancholic kingdom. It is a place of dust, shadows, and echoes. On a great throne of polished black marble sits Hades, the unseen one, the grim and implacable king of the dead. He is not evil. He is a bureaucrat. His entire existence is dedicated to maintaining the great, solemn, and unchangeable order of his realm. His job is to manage the dead. He is the great accountant of souls. He values rules, proper procedure, and above all, balanced ledgers. And today his ledgers are unbalanced. A soul, that of the Prince Hippolytus, has been duly registered by the fates. His thread has been cut. He is scheduled to arrive. But he has not appeared. This is not just an error, it is a theft. An item has been stolen from the king of the underworld's collection. Hades, in a cold and silent fury, rises from his throne. This is a violation of the most fundamental law of the cosmos. The dead must stay dead. He leaves his gloomy kingdom and travels to the one place he can lodge a formal and binding complaint. He ascends to the brilliant, sun-drenched peak of Mount Olympus, the home of his younger brother Zeus, the king of all the gods. The scene is the divine equivalent of a department head storming into the CEO's office to complain about another division poaching his clients. Hades is very upset. His entire business model is based on a steady one-way flow of traffic. Asclepius, this upstart grandson of his brother, has just installed a revolving door, and it is very bad for business. On his golden throne, Zeus, the great cloud gatherer, listens patiently as his elder brother, cloaked in shadow and gloom, makes his case. Hades's argument is not emotional. It is logical. He explains that the son of Apollo, a mere demigod, has committed the ultimate act of hubris. He has used his art to unravel the work of the fates themselves. He has disrupted the sacred and eternal boundary between mortals and gods. If this is allowed to stand, Hades argues, his voice low and cold, what happens next? Will mortals lose their fear of death? If they can be cured of death itself, why would they bother to worship us? Why would they build us temples or offer us sacrifices? The fear of their own mortality is the very foundation of their piety. He makes a very compelling case. He's probably got charts and figures. He points out the projected catastrophic decline in new arrivals to his kingdom if this resurrection trend is allowed to continue. He's basically giving a presentation on why his entire industry is at risk from a disruptive new medical startup. Classicists debate the power dynamic between Zeus and his brothers. While Zeus is the king of the gods, his authority did not traditionally extend into the domains of his brothers, Poseidon's sea and Hades's underworld. Hades is not coming to Zeus as a subordinate asking for a favor. He is coming as an equal partner in the running of the cosmos, demanding that Zeus police a problem that originated in the upper world, a problem caused by Apollo's son. Hades might also argue that this act violates the spirit of the most sacred and unbreakable laws of the universe, the oaths sworn on the river Styx, which bind even the gods themselves. The order of things, the great cycle of birth, life, and death, is the most sacred oath of all. Zeus listens, his great brow furrowed. He is in a difficult position. He loves his own son, Apollo, and by extension, he has a fondness for his brilliant, compassionate grandson, Asclepius. But he is the king. His primary duty is not to his family, but to the preservation of cosmic law and order. And he sees the terrifying logic in his brother's argument. If mortals no longer fear death, they will no longer fear the gods. They will become unruly. They will see themselves as our equals. The entire structure of the universe will be thrown into chaos. It's a classic holiday dinner argument waiting to happen. Yes, Apollo, your boy is very talented and he means well. But my other brother Hades is here complaining about him bankrupting the entire afterlife. I have to do something. He looks down from his mountain through the clouds and he sees the world of men. He sees them celebrating Asclepius, hailing him as a savior who has conquered their greatest fear. And in that celebration, Zeus sees a great danger. He comes to a decision, a terrible, reluctant, but necessary decision. He nods to his brother Hades. The balance must be restored. The transgression must be punished. The decision is made. The words are spoken. On the golden peak of Mount Olympus, Zeus, the king of the gods and the guardian of cosmic order, has heard his brother's complaint and has passed his sentence. A great sadness settles over him, for he knows what he must do. This is not a judgment born of personal anger or petty jealousy. This is a reluctant, cosmic necessity. He sees Asclepius not as a villain, but as a good and compassionate man. But it is that very goodness, that very skill that has become the threat. The universe is a thing of delicate and essential balances. Between light and dark, between summer and winter, between the sky and the sea. But the most important balance of all is the one between life and death. By conquering death, even for a single soul, Asclepius has threatened to unravel the very fabric of existence. The fear of death, Zeus understands, is what gives mortal life its meaning, its urgency, its preciousness. It is the engine of human piety and the foundation of the gods' power. If that is taken away, chaos will follow. The primary role of Zeus as king of the gods in the Greek imagination was not to be the most powerful, but to be the great upholder of order, or themis. His judgments, while often appearing harsh, were framed as necessary actions to prevent the universe from sliding into chaos. His decree against the gentle physician is the ultimate and most tragic example of this solemn duty, that a transgression of this magnitude requires a punishment of equal weight. Zeus turns to the source of his ultimate power. He sends a message to the great one-eyed giants, the Cyclopes, who toil in their roaring forges deep within the heart of the volcano Mount Etna. The Cyclopes, whose names were Brontes, the Thunderer, Steropes, the Lightning Maker, and Argesh, the Bright Flash, were not mindless monsters. They were the master craftsmen of the gods, beings of primal elemental power. It was they who had forged the great weapons of the three brother kings in their war against the Titans: the helm of darkness for Hades, the three-pronged trident for Poseidon, and for Zeus himself, the terrible and magnificent thunderbolts. Being the god of thunder has its perks. When you need to make a difficult executive decision, you don't just send a memo. You commission a custom-made, divinely forged bolt of lightning from your personal, one-eyed weapons manufacturers. It adds a certain dramatic flair. They receive the command of Zeus, and they set to work. You can imagine the scene deep within the fiery mountain. The roar of the bellows, the clang of immense hammers on the anvil, the hiss of hot metal plunged into water. They are not forging a common thunderbolt. They are crafting a specific instrument of divine judgment, imbuing it with an inescapable purpose. Meanwhile, on Earth, Asclepius is unaware of the celestial doom being prepared for him. He is at his sanctuary at Epidaurus, moving peacefully through the sunlit colonnades. He is tending to his patients, mixing a gentle herbal tea for one, listening to the story of another. He is doing the work he was born to do, his heart full of compassion, his hands full of healing. He has no idea that the king of the universe is currently in the process of having him assassinated with a lightning bolt. It is going to be a very surprising end to his week. Classicists debate whether the story of Asclepius should be seen as a tragedy, in the modern sense of a sad, unfortunate event, or in the original Greek sense of an inevitable downfall brought about by the hero's own noble but fatal flaw. In this view, Asclepius's fatal flaw was not pride or evil, but an excess of his greatest virtue, his compassion. His desire to heal was so great that it led him to break the universe's most fundamental law, making his downfall both tragic and unavoidable. Back in the forge of the Cyclopes, the work is complete. They present the finished thunderbolt to Zeus on Mount Olympus. It is a thing of terrible beauty, a jagged spear of solidified lightning that crackles with immense, contained power. Zeus takes it in his hand. This is the ultimate divine punishment. It is not a subtle message. It is not a strongly worded letter from a cosmic court. It is a literal bolt from the blue, the universe's way of saying your actions have been noted and found to be in violation of cosmic statutes. He looks down from his throne, his divine sight passing over the mountains and seas of Greece, and he finds Asclepius, walking in the sacred grove of his own temple. His face is full of a grim, sorrowful resolve. He has passed the sentence. Now he must be the executioner. He lifts the great thunderbolt high. On the peak of Mount Olympus, Zeus raises his arm. The custom-forged thunderbolt crackles in his hand, a spear of pure, captured storm. His face is a mask of grim necessity. He looks down and finds his target, and then he hurls it. The bolt leaves his hand, a silent, incandescent streak across the impossibly blue sky of Greece. It travels with the speed of thought, an inescapable message of divine judgment. Down below, in the peaceful sun-dappled sanctuary of Epidaurus, you, Asclepius, are walking through the sacred grove. The air is warm and filled with the scent of pine and the gentle buzzing of bees. You are perhaps thinking of a patient you have just treated, or contemplating a new herbal remedy. You have no warning. There is no sound of thunder, no darkening of the sky. There is only a sudden blinding flash of white-hot light, a searing heat that vaporizes the very air around you, and then nothing. Where the greatest physician in the world was standing a moment before, there is now only a patch of scorched, blackened earth. Your famous serpent-entwined staff lies on the ground, smoking but miraculously unbroken. Asclepius, the son of Apollo the healer, the man who cheated death, is gone. The death of Asclepius by Zeus's thunderbolt is the unchanging, tragic climax of your myth. It is the ultimate expression of the uncrossable boundary between the mortal and the divine. It is the final terrible price for your great act of compassionate hubris. The patients and priests at the temple rush to the scene, drawn by the flash of light and the sharp electric smell of ozone. They are stunned into a horrified silence. Their savior, their healer, their living God, has been erased from the world by the king of the gods himself. The divine healthcare plan, it seems, has been abruptly and violently terminated. Your soul, your psyche, now just a pale, bewildered shade, is met by the god Hermes, the guide of the dead. It is his duty to lead you down the long, dark path to the underworld. You are now, at last, a subject in the kingdom of Hades, the very god whose laws you violated. The meeting between you and the Lord of the Dead must have been incredibly awkward. Well, 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 Hades probably said with a thin, grim smile. Look who finally decided to show up. We've been holding your reservation. The Greek afterlife was a complex place. For most ordinary shades, the existence was a dreary, joyless one in the gray asphodel meadows. But for great heroes and demigods like you, there was a special place. The blissful fields of Elysium. It is a small comfort, but your soul is at least destined for the best possible neighborhood in the underworld. Philosophical schools in ancient Greece had very different ideas about what happened after death. The Epicureans argued that the soul simply dissolved into atoms, and that was the end. The Platonists, however, believed passionately in the immortality of the soul and in reincarnation. Your myth, with its literal journey to the underworld, aligns with the more traditional mainstream view of the afterlife as a real physical place. But while your soul is beginning its new subterranean existence, the consequences of your death are just beginning to unfold in the world above. On Mount Olympus, the gods are silent. Apollo, your father, has witnessed the entire event. He has seen the flash of the thunderbolt and felt the life of his beloved, gentle son being extinguished. His reaction is not the explosive, fiery rage you might expect. It is something far more terrifying. It is a deep, cold, and absolute silence. He does not shout. He does not weep. He simply sits on his golden throne, his knuckles white as he grips his silent lyre. His face, usually so full of light and life, is a mask of terrible, quiet grief. This is perhaps the most frightening part of the story. When a passionate, fiery god like Apollo goes completely quiet, you know that something much, much worse than shouting is coming. It is the divine equivalent of your parent looking at you and saying, "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed," which is always a prelude to a truly epic level of doom. Zeus has acted to restore the cosmic order, but in doing so, he has created a new and dangerous imbalance. He has broken the heart of one of the most powerful and brilliant of his own sons. Apollo's silent grief is now beginning to curdle into a cold, focused, and all-consuming desire for vengeance. Apollo's silence lasts for a day and a night. The other gods on Mount Olympus give him a wide berth, sensing the terrible, cold storm gathering behind his quiet grief. And then he acts. But his target in his rage is not Zeus. He knows he cannot attack the king of the gods directly. To do so would be to start a new war in heaven that could tear the cosmos apart. So his grief and anger needing a target turn elsewhere. He decides to take his revenge not on the one who threw the thunderbolt, but on the ones who forged it. He will kill the Cyclopes. His journey to the great volcano of Mount Etna in Sicily is swift and dark. The sun god himself seems to travel under a cloud of his own making. He arrives at the smoking mouth of the Cyclopes forge, and he does not bother with pleasantries. He stands before the entrance, his terrible silver bow in his hand, and he calls them out. The great one-eyed giants emerge from their fiery workshop, confused by the presence of the sun god at their door. They are smiths, not warriors, ancient beings whose purpose is to create, not to fight. They see the look on Apollo's face, but they do not understand. Apollo says nothing. He simply draws his bow. The ensuing battle is not a battle at all. It is an execution. One by one, he lets his silver arrows fly. The arrows of Apollo, like the thunderbolts of Zeus, are inescapable. The great ancient craftsmen fall, their lives ended by the grieving father whose son's death they had, however indirectly, enabled. It is a terrible act of workplace violence. The Cyclopes were just doing their job. They had a purchase order from the CEO of the universe for one extra strength, demigod smiting thunderbolt. They filled the order. Now the customer's son has arrived to complain about the product by shooting the manufacturers. It's a very unfair performance review. This act of vengeance is a grave transgression. The Cyclopes are not just monsters. They are the master artisans of the gods, essential workers directly under the protection of Zeus. By slaying them, Apollo has committed a crime against the king of the gods himself. Now it is Zeus's turn to be enraged. His first instinct is to cast Apollo down into the dark pit of Tartarus for his crime, but he cannot bring himself to do it. Apollo is his own beloved son, so he chooses a different punishment, a punishment of humility. He decrees that Apollo is to be temporarily stripped of his divinity. For 1 full year, the glorious god of the sun, music, and poetry must descend to the world of mortals and serve a human king as a common laborer. And so Apollo, the radiant god, finds himself working as a humble shepherd for King Admetus of Phaerae. It is a popular and gentle story your people tell. For a year the god of music wanders the fields, tending to the king's sheep. And as he plays his lyre to pass the time, the beauty of his divine music is so great that it tames the wild beasts of the forest. Lions and lynxes would come and lie down peacefully with the sheep, charmed by the music of the humbled god. It's a strange punishment. As punishment for your terrible crime, you must spend a year creating interspecies harmony in a pastoral setting. Scholars see this part of the myth as a crucial balancing of the cosmic scales. Zeus's killing of Asclepius created an imbalance. Apollo's killing of the Cyclopes created another. Zeus's punishment of his own son is the act that finally restores order and justice to the divine family, reaffirming his role as the ultimate arbiter. After his year of servitude is complete, Apollo's punishment is fulfilled. He is allowed to return to Mount Olympus, his divine radiance restored. His anger has cooled, replaced by a deep, abiding sadness for his lost son. He has learned his lesson in humility, and the conflict between him and his father Zeus is resolved. The divine drama is over, but Zeus knows that one final act is required. He has punished the guilty, but he has not yet honored the worthy. He looks down upon the world of men and sees that they are still mourning the loss of the great physician. He looks at his son Apollo, and he sees his unending grief. And so, out of love for his son, and out of a deep, kingly respect for the great and gentle Asclepius, Zeus decides he must perform one last miracle. He must raise Asclepius from the kingdom of his brother Hades, and give him a permanent, eternal place of honor. Zeus, his heart moved by the depth of Apollo's grief, and his mind filled with a profound respect for the gifts of his grandson, performs his final kingly act of judgment. He reaches down with his will into the gloomy depths of the underworld and calls the soul of Asclepius back from the halls of Hades. But he cannot place Asclepius back on earth as a mortal man. To do so would be to undo his own decree, and to admit that the laws of the cosmos can be broken without consequence. So he does something far greater. He grants Asclepius what he had tried to achieve for others, true immortality. He raises the great physician up to the heights of Mount Olympus, not as a guest, but as a resident. Asclepius, the gentle demigod, is to take his place among the Olympians as a full, true god. He is to be worshipped forevermore as the god of medicine and healing. It is the ultimate apology. My dearest grandson, I am very sorry that I had to strike you down with a divinely forged thunderbolt for violating the fundamental laws of reality. To make it up to you, I am going to make you an immortal god and give you your own temple franchise. As apologies from Zeus go, it is a pretty good one. And to give Asclepius a permanent, visible place of honor in the cosmos, a memorial that all mortals can look to for hope, Zeus takes his image and places it in the night sky. He creates a new constellation. If you look up on a clear summer evening, you can still see him there. A vast, sprawling pattern of stars depicting a great man holding a serpent. This is the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. The constellation tells his entire story. The man is Asclepius, the physician. The great snake he holds, the constellation Serpens, is the creature that brought him the secret of rebirth. Together, they are an eternal, glittering monument to the gentle art of healing, a quiet promise in the night sky. Interestingly, the path of the sun as it moves through the sky during the year passes directly through this constellation. This makes Ophiuchus, technically, the 13th sign of the zodiac, though it is not included in traditional astrology. So, if you were born in early December, you might be an Ophiuchus. You can tell your friends your star sign is the gentle, snake-wielding god of medicine who was unfortunately smited by Zeus for being too good at his job. It makes for a great conversation starter. Astronomical historians debate how ancient cultures constructed these great celestial figures. Did they simply connect the dots of the brightest stars into pictures that reminded them of their heroes and myths? Or did the myths come later, created as complex stories to help them remember the specific star patterns that were essential for agriculture and navigation? The legacy of Asclepius is now secure. His temples, the Asclepia, become more popular than ever, great centers of healing for the entire Greco-Roman world. His daughters, Hygeia and Panacea, and his sons, who were also physicians, become part of his divine court, minor gods and goddesses of health and well-being. The tragic story of his life has been resolved into a peaceful, eternal state of grace. He has finally found his place. And now that he's a full god, he probably has a much better chance of getting Hades to return his calls. The man born of fire who learned from the earth has found his final home in the stars. And so, as you look up at the night sky, you can still see him there. Asclepius, the serpent bearer, a quiet, eternal reminder of the gentle art of healing. A story of compassion written in starlight. And with that, our journey into the world of Greek myth comes to its close. The memory of Apollo's lyre on the warm Greek air, the scent of pine and medicinal herbs in Chiron's cave, the quiet, reassuring hiss of the sacred snakes in the temple at Epidaurus. All these sounds and senses can begin to soften now, fading like constellations at the break of dawn. The drama of the gods, the fire of the funeral pyre, the flash of the thunderbolt, have all resolved into the deep, silent peace of the night sky. The story is complete. The healer is at rest, watching over a sleeping world. And you can rest now, too. Let the story dissolve into a gentle, dreamlike calm, and allow yourself to drift away.